And now we are live on the 360 Wrestling Podcast YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone watching now on YouTube. I am Lance Brock. This is 360 Wrestling Fanatic episode 700. Going to be talking about Dark Side of the Ring, the finale of season 7. Zach Gowen against all odds. And if you missed it, if you just didn't see it for some reason, earlier today, since the Zach Gowen episode of Dark Side of the Ring was airing tonight on Vice, I decided that I'd repost the first time in 14 years almost, the first interview I did with Zach Gowen right here on 360 Wrestling Fanatic in September 2012. And it was only episode 30 of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. So just a short time after I even started 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Actually, at the time, it was just 360 Wrestling Fanatic, and well, actually at the time, 360 Wrestling Fanatic Radio. That was the only show I was doing at the time. I haven't started any other podcasts yet. At the time was just 360 Wrestling Fanatic. At the time, I believe Zach Gowen was the fourth wrestler I interviewed. First wrestler, Leah Von Dutch. Then Wrecking Ball, Randy Casey. Amazing Nate Manson. Then Zach Gowen. And honestly, I know I said this kind of the introduction on the 360 Classics podcast. I decided to call it. One of my favorites right up there with guests like Amazing Nate Manson, Wrecking Ball, Caveman, Elk. Those are very good interviews as well. Very good guests on the show. But of course, at the time, and I obviously don't mean any disrespect to any of the other guests who have been on 360 Wrestling Fanatic, either at the beginning or after a while since I've been doing it. Because like I said, at first, those were the first interviews I did. Leah Von Dutch, which was a live interview I recorded at and the time I was doing 360 on Blog Talk Radio, which, of course, Blog Talk Radio isn't even around anymore. And that's where, if for some reason someone's not familiar with Blog Talk Radio, it's where you could host your own podcast, your own show on the phone. You had a number, you had the studio on the website, and then you would call in and you would just talk on the phone and host your podcast that way. And there was a number where you could have guests on, which I did. Had Wrecking Ball, Randy Casey. And then I, of course, eventually went to Spreaker. And Spreaker is definitely a much better website for like a podcast hosting website. Much better than Blog Talk Radio, which is probably why Blog Talk Radio isn't around anymore. And even before today, I wasn't even sure if they were still around because I tried to see if I could find that episode with the Zach Gowen interview. And I even Googled Blog Talk Radio just to see, because I was looking to see the exact date, because I knew the year. I knew it was 2012, but wasn't sure about what the month and definitely not the exact date. But when I was looking for it, I did Google it, and I found out that it was indeed September 2012. So do know the month and the year, and that's fine. The exact date, to be honest, isn't really that big of a deal. But before I get into the Dark Side of the Ring episode, I want to know what if you have listened to that Zach Gowen interview, is what did you think of it? Let me know in the comment section, either right here on Spreaker or wherever you listen to 360 Wrestling Podcast. And if you think I should make this a regular podcast as well, 360 Classics, maybe I could post those other interviews with Amazing Nate Manson, Wrecking Ball, Leah Von Dutch, of course, my first interview, and Justin Main, very good interview. Had other guests too. Most recently, my most recent interview, Riley Reinhardt, very good interview. Or I could even just go back, find a random episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic and just say it's a classic, post it on there. Not sure yet if I'm actually going to make that podcast or not, but if you think that's a good idea, let me know. And I might do it if enough people say it's a good idea. Or if nobody does, I still might do it anyway. Who knows? But now, into this episode of Dark Side of the Ring, the finale of the 7th season. When I first found out the episode listing of season 7, this was one of the ones that I was looking forward to the most. Not only is it about a Michigan guy, and it's about somebody I'm going to say I know, but it's somebody I have met a handful of times and have had on the podcast. I want to say uh, at least twice, maybe 3 times. But the first interview I'd say is my favorite when I've had Zach on, and some of the ones that interviewed tonight. We have Rhino, Jimmy Jacobs, Charlie Haas, who maybe it's just me, but he looks pretty different. I almost didn't even recognize Charlie Haas. And when they first showed him, I was thinking, who's that? And then the usual thing on Dark Side of the Ring where they introduce themselves, and I was, wow, that's Charlie Haas. I didn't, like I said, I didn't recognize him at all. To me, he looked pretty different. Like I said, maybe it's just to me, but I didn't recognize him. And Bill Behrens, who was working with TNA when he first had his dark match with Truth Marty, which they ended up bringing him in back in the Asylum days and the Wednesday night pay-per-views, which he talked about on the 360 interview. And few things that, of course, was covered on Dark Side of the Ring he did talk about in that interview. Like, of course, they start off when he was a kid. His father left him and his mother. More about his father as we go on, but then has cancer, breaks his leg, and the doctor saying that the reason he did break his leg was because of the tumor in his leg. And of course, getting trained by Truth Martini at the House of Truth, he then started wrestling on the indies here in Michigan and sent a tape to trial for TNA. Then that's when him and Truth had that dark match. And he starts working TNA a little bit. At WWE hears the buzz of him in TNA, and we hear a clip of Bruce Pritchard. I want to say it's from his Something to Wrestle With podcast, where he does talk about them wanting to sign Zach, and I don't know if I'd say famous story, but story about John Laurinaitis. There was another one-legged wrestler that was being trained by Steve Kern at the time, and John Laurinaitis thought he was the one that WWE wanted to sign, so they ended up calling him first. Turned out he was not the one who WWE wanted to sign. Of course, Zach Gowen is signed, and very young age, only 18 years old, signed with the biggest pro wrestling company in the world, which would be a dream for most wrestling fans. Me, definitely, when I was that age. And I actually somehow got signed by WWE, would be a dream come true. Not only that, but he's put in an angle with Hulk Hogan, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and Vince McMahon. The Piper's Pit, where Hulk Hogan, of course, at the time, was doing the Mr. America character. And Zach with the American flag, waving it in the crowd, actually was supposed to have been a fan who jumps the barricade and enters the ring to help his hero, Mr. America, hits Roddy Piper in the back with the flag and knocks Gowen down. And Piper ends up ripping his leg off. Forgot about this, actually, where Piper first he calmed down and he started to pull his leg. It was the wrong leg, and Zach said he had to yell at him, "You're grabbing the wrong leg." I don't. I forgot about that, but and then was gonna. Piper was obviously going to be involved, and then it was going to end up with Zach Gowen versus Vince McMahon, but then Roddy Piper ended up going on some kind of talk show or something, saying some not too good things about WWE. Of course, Vince McMahon was not happy about that and fired Roddy Piper. So they just pretty much kind of rushed and got to the Zach Gowen Vince McMahon match, Vengeance 2003. And they showed the leg drop onto the chair, which apparently was hard way, and Vince ended up bleeding a lot more than he was supposed to. Zach even said he was worried that he might be fired once he gets back to the locker room, but Vince just said, "Great stuff, kid," or something like that. Gave him a hug, and he starts to talk about having heat with the boys in the back. And then with Brock Lesnar, which was here in Detroit, had Brock Lesnar annihilate him. And he talked about how Arn Anderson taught him the blade, and he had it, and he said he tried it twice, didn't work. And finally, he just does it real deep and just right across. And then he ends up bleeding too much. And the blood is just pouring from his head. I remember his mom, who was interviewed on this episode. I don't remember if I said that yet or not, but I remember her being in the audience crying, upset. And another episode, or sorry, another story he talked about in the 360 interview was his last match in WWE. But first, I want to go back just a little bit to talk about he um, talked about Brock Lesnar attack, which I talked about where sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But he, the Brock Lesnar attack, he's supposed to have a broken leg, and instead he went out, was hanging out with fans, posing for pictures and stuff. And that got him with the office, actually, because like John Laurinaitis called him and says, "You're supposed to have a broken leg, and you're out here." And he told Johnny Ace, now this was a mistake, something that he should not have said. Unfortunately, he did, which he said it was all fake. No, it's not real. And like I said, not only did he have heat with the boys in the back, but now he has heat with the office as well, talent relations, and definitely did not work out well for him. Then his release with WWE, and then showed when he was going to go back to TNA for a little bit. Showed highlights of Hard Justice 2005 when he worked a gauntlet match. And unfortunately, that did not work out. Said something he probably should not have to Jeff Jarrett. And no TNA run there, but and then talked about his drug issues with pills, and then him getting better, of course, and his appearance last year with AEW in Masonic at the Masonic Temple on the episode of Collision, which 360 Wrestling Fanatic guest Riley Reinhardt was involved in. And then the week after, he had the match with Ricochet on Dynamite. And it turned out happy ending. Zach is doing great now, motivational speaker. And just a very good episode, in my opinion, of Dark Side of the Ring. I would definitely recommend checking it out. If you have Vice, I'm sure you can watch it they'll probably replay it. They usually do during the week or on demand. If you don't have Vice, usually they put on the YouTube, both the Vice and the Dark Side of the Ring YouTube channel. So really no reason I shouldn't watch it. Again, selfishly check out the 360 Wrestling Fanatic interview I posted with Zach Gowen. That you can get that now. No video version of it, but audio, yes, right here on Spreaker or wherever you listen to 360 Wrestling podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music. There might even be other apps or websites I'm not thinking of right now where you can listen to 360 Wrestling podcasts at. You can just search for Google and I'm sure you'll find it. Thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Whether you're listening to the audio version or watching the live stream on YouTube right now, I appreciate everyone who listens. You can let me know your thoughts on the episode, The Dark Side of the Ring, and my interview, if you don't mind, in the comment section right here on Spreaker or wherever you listen to 360 Wrestling podcasts at. If the website or the app you listen to on has a comment section. Also in the comment section below, right here, and then YouTube down here somewhere. I think leave your comments there, what you thought of the episode and the interview. Or you can email me, 360wrestlingpodcasts@gmail.com. You can talk, follow me on the social media, Instagram, 360 Wrestling Podcasts, and on X at 360 Wrestling Pod. We'll be back tomorrow morning for the Wednesday episode of 360 Good Morning Wrestling fans. We'll be previewing tomorrow night's AEW Dynamite the Go Home episode before All in London this Sunday. And that is all for 360 Wrestling Fanatic episode 700. Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. And until tomorrow morning, I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.